You're watching PowerNation. Today on Engine Power, we start with a bone stock Mustang and turn it into a track-ready weekend racer.
There it goes. Oh.
We'll start with safety and performance modifications and test them out on the chassis dyno.
Hey everyone, welcome to Engine Power. Today we are going to take a detour from our normal work to embark on a new journey. We have partnered with Summit Racing Equipment to build up our newly acquired hot rod for an exciting new spec class in the SCCA. We think it's pretty cool.
If you're not familiar, a spec class is a form of racing that's based around a certain body style or chassis of vehicle so that it has a nice, even, level playing field for all the drivers. So usually an entry-level class so that it's an easy way for people to get into racing. And the class that we're going to be entering in is based off a Mustang, specifically the S197 Mustang, which is from 2005 to 2009 in the first generation. And these are the ones with the 4.6-liter mod motor in them. Now, this is going to be a really fun class because this is a pretty performance-oriented car, and the one that we got is a 2008 Mustang GT. This is actually a pretty lucky find. We found this locally here in Middle Tennessee at a used car dealership. This one only has 34,000 miles on the clock, so it's in great condition. The paint has the normal wear and tear. It's got dings and scratches and things like that. The tires are pretty old. It's probably the only set of tires that's ever been put on the car. It has some questionable modifications under the hood, but all in all, it doesn't leak. It's not rusty. It seems to run and function pretty well. It's got a nice interior, 5-speed manual, so it should be a pretty fun car to drive and pretty easy to modify. Take this thing for a little rip here, see what it feels like. So far, pretty good.
Got pretty lucky getting a low mileage car because not saying that people really beat on these things and trash them out early because they do. But this is one of those cars that it's affordable. A lot of people can get into one, and you know, this is a lot of people's first cars.
I mean, the suspension feels good. Everything feels, you know, stock.
It's interesting that you can take mostly a stock car, change a couple things, and then you're out pounding on the say on a track all day long. Not only doing that, driving it to the track, running it, and then driving it home. Did you learn how to drive on a 5-speed? Or your driver's ed have an automatic in it?
I learned to drive before driver's ed.
Like 8 years ago.
No, say 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, 8 years ago when I got my learner's permit, but but having a manual one for a track car, I think it just makes it way more fun. It's kind of easy because if you know the parts that you're gonna do, you can just you can go on Summit Racing's website, find all the parts, and just buy them because you know that those are for that car and what they are, and you know they're gonna be legal, and then you can just get them and go and put them on and race. Let's see what this thing can do.
Whoa!
Oh. Okay, so we're back from our test drive, and we have strapped our 2008 Mustang GT onto the chassis dyno because we want to see how much power it's going to make at the wheels before we start doing our upgrades. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Start her up. Let's do this thing.
Brake is off.
Everything's good. All right. Let her rip, Tater Chip.
This is way different than the test sled.
I don't have a lot of expectation, but we're going to find out. Not bad. 244 for power.
Oh.
270 pound-feet.
Spicy.
I'm not actually sure what these things are supposed to make.
Well,
that's probably about right, I guess, for a 4.6.
Sure. Well, I mean, we could do one more if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, now we were driving around,
Yeah,
so all the fluids and stuff have been warm. But yeah, back it up real quick, and we'll see what it does.
Let's see if we make another one here.
Yeah.
It's so nice in here. It's so nice and quiet.
I mean, yeah, for no mufflers, it's actually not bad.
Yeah, here we go. Let me get her up around 2. We'll whack it again here.
So that's probably more realistic. 278 horsepower and 283 pound-feet.
I'd buy that for $1.
I mean, that's not a bad graph. It's, you know, it trends right. It's got a little ups and downs there, which, you know, that could just be from the not stock exhaust or something like that.
Sure.
But all in all, I mean, that's not horrible.
You know, we know it has no mufflers.
No, and yeah, it's got no mufflers and it's got some kind of weird, you know, intake system on it. But like with those numbers, I kind of doubt it has a tune or anything, so that's not a big deal. And I mean, it seems to run fine. It drove fine out on the street. So
everything doesn't smell weird, doesn't act weird, doesn't sound weird.
Nothing's caught on fire, so.
And nothing's caught on fire. All right, we're gonna call that baseline.
Yeah, get her unstrapped and start doing upgrades.
Easy peasy.
Up next on Inch of Power, we get rolling on our Mustang project, so grab a seat, stay tuned.
Yeah, what he said, mine still needs some work. After a successful chassis dyno session, we know exactly what our Mustang makes at the tire, and that's a number we're going to try and improve on a little bit later. But first off, we're going to focus on the safety aspect of this car. We're going to make some changes inside here that not only make the car safer, they make it function better as a race car on the track. And to get that done, I am going to stay out of the way and let Frankie handle all of that.
Yeah, move it or lose it. First thing we're going to do is get these really nice, but not very practical leather seats out of the way so we can start our modifications. We'll unbolt the seat from the floor and tip it back, allowing us to access the power seat and airbag connectors. We did unhook the battery prior to starting any work, and with those unplugged, we can pull the seat completely out of the car. The passenger side follows pretty much the same process. We will continue stripping the interior by removing the lower and upper seat back sections, removing the B-pillar and rear quarter trim, and gently unplugging and unbolting the front seat belts. With the carpet rolled up out of the way, we can remove the bolts from these side body braces. They are heavily seam sealed to the body of the car, so a thin scraper and a hammer can break through the adhesive. Then we pry them out to finish our interior removal. Okay, so now that we have most of the interior out of our Mustang, we can show you why we took it out. And that's because we're going to be installing a roll bar from Maximum Motorsports. They supplied this kit, which is for a 2005 to 2014 Mustang, and this is a robust bolt-in roll bar that makes it really easy to install. It's made of 1 3/4 inch 134 wall tubing. It has a bolt-in harness bar, a diagonal brace to make it legal. It bolts right where the supports that we took out of the car go, and it only needs these rear braces to be welded, mostly just to make it easy to ship. And so this should be pretty easy to install, should fit our Mustang great, and give us the safety we need.
To start the install, we'll bolt in these fabricated body braces that will be the front mounts for the roll bar. The roll bar can be carefully snaked into the car, and these 2 rear braces can be slid on before it's laid in place. With the bolts and the front mounts, we can mark out the area where the rear mounts meet the wheel well and remove the rear braces. This way we can heat up and scrape away the sound deadening. With rear bars mocked up again, we will carefully drill starting holes through the threads in the bracket and through the wheel well.
To get to the outside wheel well, the car goes up on the lift and the rear wheels are removed. We'll increase the size of the holes we drilled to accept some 3/8 bolts supplied with the kit and install the backing plates for the rear mounts. Now that everything is fully bolted in mock-up mode, we will use our Forney TIG welder to tack the rear supports in place. Then the assembly can be unbolted and removed in one piece, and the rear braces can be fully MIG welded in place.
To give it a clean look and protect it from corrosion, we will paint all the pieces in our prep booth. After wiping everything down with lacquer thinner, a coat of primer will give a great adhesive base before laying down a few coats of matte black paint to give it a nice clean look.
When the paint dries, everything gets installed for the final time, including the original trim panels that have been notched for the rear support bars, so we can keep the stock interior and have a clean appearance inside the car. So we have our roll bar reinstalled for real in our Mustang, and we have put together some of the back seat. So the next thing we're gonna do in the safety department is seats, because to be legal for the class, we need a fixed back racing seat. So we already have the driver's side figured out and installed for real. And the way we did it is we actually used the stock seat mounting locations by building some brackets out of 1/8" steel. We gusseted them up and bent them up so we can put them in the stock locations in case we ever want to put this car back with the stock seats. So all we have to do now is mount up the passenger seat and get it bolted down.
This Summit Racing bucket seat gets placed on top of the mounts, and we can use some locking clamps to hold it in position. Once we have it exactly where we want, we can drill 4 mounting holes through the seat and bracket to bolt it in with some 10mm hardware.
All right, so we did get a set of matching seat covers for the Summit Racing seats, and with that, we're pretty much there on safety modifications. We will add some belts, but for safety, I think we're good. So we're gonna move on to performance modifications.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's my favorite part.
With all of our safety and interior upgrades complete, it's time to shift gears into adding more performance. And that will include some engine tuning and getting those spent exhaust gases out more efficiently.
All right, we are back on our 2008 Mustang, and we are moving on to performance modifications. But like we mentioned before, there are some questionable upgrades under the hood, and this is what we're talking about. This car previously had a cold air intake put on it. It was on there when we bought it, but there are some pieces missing. Mainly, there's supposed to be a divider wall that goes here and separates the filter from all the hot engine bay air, and the filter clearly has not been maintained. It honestly looks like it's been beat up in a bar fight or something. And the last piece here is this connection that's supposed to go to the crankcase ventilation, but honestly, someone just drove a pipe plug in there. So all that is really not good for business.
But rather than mess with all that stuff, we decided to get a whole new kit from Summit Racing Equipment. It's a brand new cold air kit, and best of all, it comes with a flash tuner. So once we get our new cold air kit installed, we'll run the flash tuner in and hopefully pick up a few more horsepower at the wheels. And best of all, this is super easy to install.
With all the missing pieces, it's pretty easy to remove the old system. All we have to do is unplug the map sensor, loosen the hose clamps, and the whole assembly can come out as one piece. These 2 bolts in the left valve cover get removed and then reinstalled with this clamp bracket sandwiched beneath them. Then a bolt in the radiator shroud can be removed, and the air divider can be bolted in the same space with the hardware from the kit. The air tube gets slid over the throttle body, the crankcase ventilation is hooked up correctly to make it carb compliant, and finally, the inlet cone and filter can be installed. Simple as that.
We are taking a bit of a break to get out of the way for the guys from Wrapped Up to come in and lay down some sweet custom graphics to make our weekend race car a bit racier. They are laying down some matte black racing stripes from front to back, a side stripe above the rocker, along with some custom branded graphics.
All right, so now we have this awesome decal package on this car, and it really looks like a performance car, but we still have some performance upgrades to go. Namely, the next one we're gonna tackle is the shifter, because if you're building one of these cars, you're kind of limited on what you can do, but there are things you can do to up the performance feel of the car, and one of those is a short throw shifter, and that is an easy task that we're gonna handle right now. Removing the stock shifter knob and boot is super simple, and we will also remove this cover panel just to get it out of the way. Only 3 fasteners have to be removed to get the shifter loose, and then a single nut holds on the shifter linkage. Then the car goes back down, and we go back up. Getting the shifter out takes some patience, but it can be snaked up through the trans-tunnel hole. After switching a few bushings onto the new Hurst shifter, it can slide into the same position. Just like that. Now, back underneath the car.
We go back underneath to bolt in the new shifter assembly and reattach the linkage. Then everything is done, so we can go back in the car and install the new polished shifter stick. The trim piece can be reinstalled, and then this included boot retainer gets slid on the stick to hold the stock shifter boot in place. The final piece de resistance is the white shifter ball that gets aligned and tightened down. Next up for our Mustang project is the exhaust system. As per the SCCA rules for this class, it requires the car to have a full exhaust system, including cats and mufflers. So we picked up this new one from Summit Racing Equipment, and it's going to work great. It fits an 05 through 09 Mustang, and it's a bolt-in operation. It's made out of 304 stainless for rust resistance, because keep in mind, this still is a street car. But remember, our car already has some sort of wacky aftermarket exhaust on it, so we're gonna have to get it up in the air, get it cut off, and see what it takes to fit this one up. We'll use an impact to loosen the rusty clamps, and our handy-dandy reciprocating saw chops the old exhaust into pieces so we can slide it out from under the car in sections.
Okay, so we have the entire kit mocked up in the car from the mufflers forward, and like Pat said, we're gonna have to do some modification to make the old stuff work with the new stuff. We cut out everything someone else had done before, and the way we're gonna connect everything is with a set of V-band clamps welded directly to the stock cats, because we do have to keep those to be legal in the class. So we have a set of V-bands tacked there, and then that will allow us to run the 3-inch unrestricted from there to the back of the car. So we'll get these fully welded, and then we can tighten everything for real.
With everything positioned exactly where we want it, we'll finish weld both sides of the V-bands, and then we can cinch down all of the clamps.
Okay, so with that, our exhaust is completely sealed up and done. So all we have to do is get this car down off the lift and over to the chassis dyno.
Coming up, we get our Mustang project back up on the dyno rollers to see what our upgrades translate to power at the tires.
All right, everybody, we have our 2008 Mustang GT strapped to the chassis dyno. So it is time to figure out what all our upgrades are gonna add up to for power at the wheel. If you remember, we did a cold air intake, but we have a less restrictive air filter probably, and a divider wall to keep the hot air from going into it. And we went from a 2.5-inch straight through exhaust to a 3-inch stainless with straight through mufflers. But there is one last thing we have to do, and that is the flash tuner that came with the air intake.
Yes, this flash tuner came with our cold air kit as a Summit Racing combo. Flash tuners are very intuitive to use. You just plug them in and then follow the easy prompts, and it loads a specific tune that's set up for our cold air kit. So all we gotta do is plug it in. All right, key on. We're gonna program vehicle, Summit package, that's the one we want, and we send it. After it saves the stock data, then it's gonna go in, put the tune in. Data is saved. Preparing the new data. Turn key off. Oh, download is complete. Tune has been programmed successfully to vehicle. Turn key off. I guess we're good to go.
It's actually a little bit quieter.
It's actually quieter. I don't know.
I don't know. Sometimes the straight pipe is a little loud and maybe a little obnoxious.
I think I like that a little better.
Yeah, this might be a little nicer.
We want to be legal, so that's...
Go ahead and yeah, make a rip, see what happens.
Ooh, I like that shifter.
Yeah, that nice short throw.
Nice short throw. All right, let's see what we got here. Where we at? There we go.
Might have seen over 300 pound-feet. Hold on. Yep, 307 pound-feet.
Woo!
And 283.49, basically and a half, horsepower. That's actually a pretty big improvement for just bolt-on, especially on torque.
The graph looks really nice, comparatively speaking.
Yeah, here, let me overlay it. Yeah, there's the before, and then the after is the red line. Ooh. So you can see, like, meat in the curve. That's a huge jump.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, that's, yeah, over 20 pound-feet in torque. For just like, I mean, I'd call that probably 2.5, 3 hours worth of work.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid.
That's pretty solid. Let's do another while we got her all warmed up here.
Back it up there and see what it does.
All right, here we go. Nice.
solid rip.
What was that, 280?
289
Yeah.
and 306.
Ooh,
That
solid
is
improvement.
solid. Look, that's a solid graph too. Just like nice and smooth, carries power. I mean,
I'm very impressed on how smooth the graph looks.
yeah, I mean, it runs good. I mean, we didn't really get deep into the engine at all. It's basically just bolt-ons, but
Right.
that's
And
pretty
keep in
solid
mind,
improvements.
we actually put mufflers on it.
I know, they're straight through mufflers,
They're
but
straight through mufflers,
it's
but we
quieter.
still added some mufflers. The pipe is bigger,
Yep.
but a little bit of a tunage on the handheld there, and solid improvement.
yeah,
Solid.
I mean, and it sounds good. Like, I actually like it a little bit quieter. It still has that throaty sound, but
Yeah.
it's not like obnoxious and cackly. So I think that's win-win-win all the way around. For bolt-ons, you can't really ask for much more.
Nope.
I mean, that gives you a nice, easy power band that you can play with on track, but you're not gonna get yourself in trouble. Like, if you're a starting driver, you don't need 500 at the wheel because you're gonna put it in the ditch pretty freaking quick. But you know, for that power range, you can go out and thrash on it super hard and not have to worry about it. So.
And this thing, that's a great tune. It's still a street car. This is still a street car.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, easy peasy. You know, the clutch is nice to drive.
Yeah.
Car's easy to drive still and everything. So.
This is this is going to be pretty cool. Now we have other improvements to do, but that's going to come up very, very soon.
Yeah, I think this is probably going to be where we stop for today. We got safety and power. Those are two really important things, and now we need, you know, handling and stopping, which are also pretty important. So I think we'll tackle those next time, but for now, I think that's solid.
All right, that's a great success.
Heck yeah. Last time, we upped the safety and power of our 2008 Club Spec Mustang, and today we're going to continue on with some serious suspension and braking upgrades.
Then when she's all said and done, we take it to the track and test it out.
Just don't wreck it before I get a chance to drive it. Hey everyone, welcome to the Engine Power Shop where, as you can tell, we have our 2008 Mustang GT back on the lift because we are going to be continuing this build. Now, we are building this car in conjunction with Summit Racing Equipment to be legal for the SCCA's new spec racing class. It's called SPEC Mustang. Now, a spec class is an even playing field entry-level driver's class for people who want to get into racing in an easy and relatively affordable way. Now, we've already done a bunch to this car in the terms of performance and safety, but today we're going to get underneath and do some more upgrades. But while we get the rest of these wheels and tires off, take a look at all the modifications we've already done to this car. After giving it a shakedown on the street, we brought this pony car into the shop and immediately strapped it to our chassis dyno to see what the stock wheel horsepower numbers were. Unsure whether we were happy about that or not, we got cracking on upgrading our Mustang in the safety department to give us some protection from our amateur driving. We removed most of the interior and fitted up a simple bolt-in roll bar from Maximum Motorsports.
This complemented a set of Summit Racing fixed seats with custom brackets and comfy foam inlays because this is still a street car. Our car was speedily wrapped right here in our shop to give it a racy look, and then we completed some bolt-on performance upgrades to back it up. These were quick and simple and included a cold air intake, short throw shifter, catback exhaust, and a flash tuner. All of our upgrades added up to a healthy improvement to 289 horsepower and 306 pound-feet at the wheels. All that worked out great, but now we're only halfway done. The next thing we have to do is get on the suspension side to make this car legal, both on a regional and national level for the SCCA. And that includes some rulebook specific parts. First off, the shocks. The shocks have been sealed at Summit to prove they have not been tampered with. Also, a specific spring rate on the front and back to make the cars legal. Also, we have some optional items in there, like an adjustable panhard bar and a strut brace bar, and we'll also be putting on some adjustable caster camber plates. This car has a spec wheel and tire size, so we'll get into that later. But all these parts are very easy to bolt on and make the car legal, so let's get to it.
We'll start in the back of the car by removing the old parts that we won't be reusing. The factory anti-roll bar with its tiny links is removed, followed by the panhard bar. Finally, after unbolting them inside the trunk and on the bottom, the original shocks are removed. Now that the rear end is only held in by the 3-link setup, we gently pull the rear end down and snake the stock coil spring out. These new spec springs will lower the car and have a shorter free length, so they are a bit easier to slide back in.
The new Coney shocks are spec'd out by the SCCA rules, and to be legal at an event, must have an untampered seal over the shock nut like these ones Summit Racing puts on. If you plan on building a club spec Mustang, you can call the experts at Summit Racing Equipment and they can make sure that you get a sealed set. We'll set the newly installed shock absorbers to the middle of their adjustment for now and can always tune on them later. The next upgraded piece is the adjustable panhard bar. So there's that right there. And the rear suspension must be loaded to install it. It is set to a starting length, and then we will check the rear end center alignment once the car is fully back on the ground. The last cool part to install is this Eibach anti-roll bar, which is a stiffer design and comes with stronger billet support links to stand up to the deflection under hard loading. It comes with new hardware and clamshells to connect it to the rear axle, and with that, our rear suspension upgrades are complete.
Up next, we finish up giving our Mustang its lowered swagger and some new struts. Okay, so now that we have the rear suspension done on our 2008 Mustang, we're going to move on to the front, and it's pretty similar in terms of upgrades. We're going to be doing a spec strut, a spec spring, an anti-roll bar, and we also have a shock tower brace and camber caster plates to go on top of the struts, but we do have to get all of the old stuff out first, like usual, so we'll get started, and then we'll show you our upgrades.
Our suspension upgrades on the front of the car are a bit more involved, but we can still start by removing all of the old parts that we aren't going to be using. The front anti-roll bar comes first, and after disconnecting the links, we can unbolt the chassis mounts and pull it out of the way. Next, we can unbolt the strut from the knuckle, lower the car, and unbolt the 4 upper bearing mount nuts before sliding the entire strut assembly out of the wheel well.
Okay, so now that we have our strut out of the car, what we're gonna do is not really use any of this except for the rubber isolator at the top, so we do have to pull it apart. So we're gonna put it in our strut spring compressor here. This is a fancy one that is honestly totally worth it to have. You could do this with a cheaper, less expensive one, but if you're doing this more than once in your life, it's kind of worth it just to get the nice one because it is much safer, it's much easier to use, and it's gonna make this job go way, way quicker. Once we have compressed the spring enough to remove the load from the upper strut mount, we can take off the large shock nut and pull the bearing rubber isolator. If you are reusing the shock, make sure you hold on to it after removing the nut, but since we're tossing it in scrap, we're not too worried about it. That guy. But now we can put it back together. The reason we're only gonna be using these isolators and not these upper bearing mounts is because we're going to be utilizing a set of Maximum Motorsports caster camber plates on top of our new struts. Now these are spec'd out and required by the class because the stock alignment settings really don't do that great on track, so this gives you some adjustability of caster and camber independently of each other in the car. That way we can set up the suspension just the way we like, and it comes with all the hardware you need to put together. These are all the pieces, and this is actually what it looks like when it's assembled, and it even comes with a rubber band to kind of hold everything together while you get it up in the car. So we'll get our new isolator, new spring, new strut, and caster camber plates together and in the car. The assembly process is pretty much the same, but in reverse with all the new parts. Since this is a lower height spring, it doesn't need to be compressed as much for installation. The important thing is to make sure the pigtails, or ends of the coil spring, are properly seated in the upper and lower notches when mating it with the strut. The new strut mount nut can be tightened down, and then the spring can be released and the whole assembly removed to be installed in the car. These caster camber plates allow for full adjustment of both settings, so we'll just snug down the nuts for now so we can set our alignment once the vehicle is back on the ground. And we will also wait until then to tighten all of the suspension fasteners.
This is also a great time to bolt in this strut tower brace from UMI Performance to keep the shock towers from flexing during cornering. With the mounts bolted to the upper strut mounts, the adjustable link can be bolted in with this beefy hardware. The final piece is our new anti-roll bar, which comes with new clamshell mounts and can go in with the original end links. With all that, our new front suspension upgrades are wrapped up and ready for some action. Coming up, our braking power goes up to slow our Mustang down. The finish line is in sight on our SCCA Mustang project. So far, we made some great upgrades, and now it's time for the final round. Not only is it important for a race car to accelerate on a racetrack, it is as important to have it do the brakes right. So we're going to upgrade this car with some cool new parts.
Now, our brakes on our car look fairly new because the car's low mile, right? But if we're going to the track, we want all new stuff, just mostly for safety. Now, the rules are pretty specific on what you can do for brakes and what you can't. As far as rotors, you can't have drilled or slotted. It's basically a stock replacement. So we do have a set of EBC stock replacement rotors. These are basically an OE replacement, but they do have a nice coating for rust prevention. But when we get to the pads, we're basically free reign. We can do whatever we want for compounds. So what that means is that we can step up over an OE compound. So we're gonna be using their blue stuff pads. Now these are definitely a huge improvement over the OE pads, mostly in the compound department because they have a really stable temperature range that they work in. They have a really nice cold bite, but when you start beating on this thing on the track and the temperatures get up, they have a really even coefficient of friction. So that's good because we want consistent braking. They also have a really nice V groove here in the center to remove dust particles when you're under heavy braking, because you don't want that getting in between the rotor face and the pad face because that inhibits the braking effect. They also have a pre-engraved pad face so that they break in really quickly once you get them installed. And the body is powder coated so that if you ever do have to change the pads later on, like in 3 or 4 years once they're worn out, they come out nice and easy. They're not going to be rusted in place. So we'll get these in, but we do have to get all the stock stuff out of the way first. It doesn't get any more straightforward than this for a modern brake job. We'll remove the caliper on its own so we can clean and lube the slide pins, then remove the caliper bracket so we can get to the old rotor. The bracket is cleaned and the slide pin bores and the pins themselves get a fresh application of high-temp ceramic grease. Being careful not to touch the new rotor face with our dirty hands, we can slide it on the ANIC's coated hub and use a lug nut to hold it in place. Then the bracket can be reinstalled and our new brake pads are slid into their grooves. The compressed caliper goes back on and the bolts can be tightened. Brake job done.
We're outside the shop here in General Population to get our wheels and tires mounted up. Now keep in mind, this is a spec wheel and tire as per the class rules for SCCA, so we picked up some ones from Summit Racing that were an affordable option. Our wheel is an 18 by 9.5 and it's plus 35 offset. They're going to be fitted with a set of tires from Goodyear. This is a spec tire, which is a 275 40 ZR18 Eagle F1 Supercar 3. Now, there's a couple of great things about having a spec tire. One, we know it's going to fit the car because that's what it's designed around. And two, everyone is on a level playing field because it's the same tire, so everyone has the same footing. We're out here and we're going to mount these in-house ourselves because we have the tools and Frankie has the talent. We've already installed these new valve stems with aftermarket TPMS sensors so we can calibrate them on the vehicle later. After buttering up the wheel and tire with this slick tire soap, we can verify which side of the tire is the outside and push the inner bead of the tire onto the wheel easily. The machine arms and duckbill will help us push the outer bead over the wheel without damaging it. Using the machine's air chuck, we can seat the tire beads and then install the valve stem core and set the tire pressure to 30 psi. Our balancing machine lets us use low-profile sticky weights on the inner and outer planes to balance them all within 1/10 of an ounce. Back in the shop, the new setup can be mounted to the car with new matching lug nuts, and finally, our race-inspired look comes together. The last thing we need to do on this pony is to give it an oil change. The oil isn't in bad shape, but we have no way to know when this oil change was last done, so better be safe than sorry. A new Motorcraft oil filter wraps up the bottom end and keeps the Ford purists at bay.
All right, so we're gonna be filling our Mustang with Schaefer's Specialized Lubricants Supreme 9000 Series oil. Now this is a full synthetic oil that they have formulated to meet and exceed the API SP certification, which is a certification for modern oils. And what that means is it's gonna have great prevention against low speed pre-ignition. It's gonna have great wear prevention for timing chain engines, which we have in this Mustang. And it has great prevention against buildup of oil residue and varnish inside the engine, which our engine is basically new, so we want to keep it that way. We're going to put 6 quarts of this in there, and then we'll be almost ready for the track. Schaefer's has been making high-quality lubricants for over 175 years, and they have various lines of oils, greases, and shop lubricants for whatever you are working on. Slam the hood on this baby. Let's get it to the track.
To the track. Coming up, we take our Club Spec Mustang out on the track here at Mid-Ohio and see how our modifications are going to perform. And we're going to try and keep it out of the grass.
Maybe. We all know what happened last time.
It's time to test out our 2008 Club Spec Mustang, so we left Tennessee and headed to Ohio to find a suitable track for ringing this car out.
All right, everybody, we have finished up our Club Spec Mustang. We've brought it out here to the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course in Lexington, Ohio. Summit Racing was a huge partner on this build, and they have rented the track for the day. So we're gonna tag along, get some time on track, test and tune, and see how our upgrades perform with the car.
I've been here a few times, and this is Frankie's first, so it's gonna be a treat for him. It's a fantastic facility and a lot of fun to drive on. We're gonna take our old car here and see what we can make happen with it. And we're gonna try to get it in before the rain because, well, this is Ohio, and you never know what the weather's gonna do next.
We do have wipers though, so if we do, we're just gonna run it, see what happens.
That's what a car's for.
So we're excited to be here today for our track day here in Mid-Ohio with our employees as part of our partnership with the track. We get to bring the employees out and they get to run through their advanced schooling. So on day one, they get to go through some drills and some autocross and then get to play on the big track. And once they complete that, they get to come back the following year and we spend the day on the big track.
This is the first time that Jim has seen our car, and he is an experienced racer, so we had to get his opinion on it.
Oh, it's great. It's an awesome car. It's fun to see what you guys have done with it. You know, obviously you started with a stock car, you found a nice start, and then you've dressed it up, made it look great, new wheels and the stripes and everything else, so we're excited to see it on the track.
This is a lot different than the test sled.
Yeah, you go from something that weighs like 2,200 pounds with almost 500 wheel to something that weighs, 34-ish with 290. It's definitely a lot more car to throw around. That's a huge part of this. Is it's a rear-wheel drive car, manual, V8. So it's got a lot of fun aspect to it, and it's not too much power where you can't get yourself in trouble.
You remember who you're driving with here?
I mean, I'm not worried about it. Just don't wreck it before I get a chance to drive it.
We're just gonna take it easy here, get the feel for the track.
Yeah, get some heat in the tires. This is a nice track though.
That's a beautiful track.
Yeah, I've never been here. I've only seen like clips, races and stuff like that, but it always looks super fun.
Right,
and honestly, like just this first little bit here seems really, really fun to drive.
The brakes are unbelievably good. The thing about this car, I think the key word is predictability. Like that's on the floor right there,
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a really fun car to drive.
Well, you're gonna be driving it here in a little bit.
Oh, I'm excited. That's like, the test sled was, that was a totally different animal. And a lot of fun, but I'm super excited to drive this thing.
I've been here a few times, and I think they've done some improvements on the track itself for the surface. Not bad.
No, that seems super fun. Get out and do some switcheroo.
Ugh. Wow.
Only bad part about having totally 2 different height drivers is that we have to move the racing seat so I can drive. We drilled 2 different holes in the seat bracket, so there's one that is about right for a 6-foot person or maybe somebody just over 6 foot, and then there's a whole nother set that's about 3.5 inches forward. So we'll just take this whole seat and slide it back a little bit, like that. All right, seat is changed. Now it's my turn.
Nice big back straightaway.
Oh yeah, look at that.
I can't believe you can bolt parts on and have it run this well.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's what I was saying earlier. It's like totally changed the feel of the car.
All right, let's see what you can do here. Remember, you should be on the gas at that, let it fade out.
Kind of push out.
Nice. I'm surely not the one to be giving driving tips, that's for sure.
Well, you definitely have more experience at this track than I do.
I do.
So I am all ears.
Okay, on this, you can usually get about 120, 130 if we're not gonna.
Yep, there's 120.
Okay, so start braking. Now remember, you should be in third already.
Yep.
Okay, this is your turning cone. You should be able to almost run that cone over. Okay, it's a little hot coming in there.
Yep, little too much.
So now, this was a weird blind corner.
Yep.
So make sure, because we're gonna be down on the other end here. Okay, same thing. By the time you hit the peg of that corner, you should be on the gas.
Yep.
And this one's a little bit freaky right here. All right, nice, very nice. And they say that, like, they said that, you know, the track that has a lot of forgiving corners.
Yeah, the friendly curbs are really nice because you can just kind of run right up over them, you know?
Now stay more to the middle of the track. Get closer to this cone.
Yep.
Stay more to the middle. Too far. Too far. You overdrove it.
A little too hot there.
Okay, on the gas now. There you go. Rev limiter,
Yeah.
almost.
This thing is so much fun.
Wow. Is that something or what?
This is a lot, like, yeah, think about that. This is like basically a mildly upgraded stock car. And it's so much fun on track.
Oh my God.
You know, and this is a great track too. I've actually never, like, just never being here and driving for the first time. So cool. Like that was an awesome drive.
Yeah, no, very, very fun.
Oh man, that was a lot of fun. And this thing kind of surprised me with how well it drove.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive that you can take and bolt a bunch of parts on a stock car and go out here and thrash it and handle great and drive well and be fast, and it makes us look better than we actually are. So.
Yeah, and like the upgrades, really easy to do. Probably could do it in a weekend. The car, like you said, is extremely fun to drive. We got to thank Summit Racing for partnering with us on this build. It was a ton of fun to do. And thank you to Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course for letting us come out here and thrash on this car around their road course and giving us part of their day. They still have cars running, but I think we're gonna call it because we know our place and it is not on the podium.
Yeah, our driving existence basically is a round number. It's 0, so time to get something to eat.